Matt Kean here for a second. Now, I tell you what, Tony, you got to be loving this, right? This bloke who is apparently a factional leader of the Liberal Party at one point in time, who is going around the federal government to outdo the Labor Party when it comes to not just dramatic action on climate change, but changing the things that consumers can buy. I mean, literally, you couldn't hope for a better each-way agent. You couldn't hope for a better double agent. Can you now finally admit that this bloke was a long-term plant from Sussex Street? You built him in a lab and it worked.
Well, Paul, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but he's not. And I'll explain a couple of reasons why. But I'll take up your first point, and that is that I'll just quote Andrew Cannell said today that Matt Kean likes poking Scott Morrison in the eye and demonstrating policy differences, and that's pretty clear.
Yeah,
I think one of the things that we want to be really mindful of, and this move on the electrical cars is a really important step, but it's also has to go further, and it also has to have a proper sense about it. If you're actually going to incentivise people to buy electric cars, you also have to make sure you look at registration costs that other countries have. You should be looking at the sorts of payments and tariffs that are put on these cars as luxury cars. Those tariffs should be dealt with, which Labor's announced in addition to deal with. But I think one of the things that's most telling about it is that the Minister Kean did actually really drop Scott Morrison in it today, because he said with the announcement on having these charging stations that there hasn't been discussions with the New South Wales government.
Yeah.
Like that means there's lack of coordination. That is against the national interest. They need to talk to states federally, and it just sort of starts to sound like they've got all announcement, no plan, because you've got a plan with states as well, so you're not duplicating and you're getting best bang for your taxpayers' buck.
Yeah, but Holly, on the other side of things is that when you turn around and say, we're going to incentivise this, we won't tax that, at a point you have to come to a conclusion about, well, that's going to cost the federal budget, right? So right now, fuel excise. Fuel excise is $20 billion a year once you put together your diesel and your other petrol taxes, okay? I want someone somewhere to tell me what is the replacement. Now, last night we had the electric vehicles lobby group on here who openly talked about maybe, you move from registration to sort of, paying tax by the number of kilometres that you use. But this again, and it's like the renewable energy thing, I don't have a problem with the concept of renewable energy. I have a problem with people who won't tell you that it costs money to build it, that it has environmental consequences to build it. If they're honest about that, then you can finish the argument with, and in the end, in 20 years' time, the energy's cheaper. But people have to say that either the federal budget is going to go into $20 billion of deficit every year, or there's going to be an alternative way to get the revenue. Otherwise, they're just talking in service of a bumper sticker.
Well, I can assure you, if it's a coalition-led federal government, we won't be going into deficit $20 billion per year. And this is why when we're talking about a shift to renewables, whether it's electric vehicles, whether it's an adoption of hydrogen, whether it's adoption of lithium-ion batteries, whatever it is the technology takes over in the emissions discussion and how technology is going to move this debate forward, it's not going to be driven by legislated mandates that somehow or other we're going to have to put an impost in business or families because it's legislated at a certain level and the government is going to tell you what you're going to do. I can tell you there is no one in this government, there is no one sitting on the Labor opposition or in the Greens or anywhere else in the crossbench, and particularly probably no one in the bureaucracy that is smarter than our scientists and our industry and those that are leading the innovation in this area. I would much prefer to see those at NAIR at the University of Newcastle to be incentivised to work out how we're going to move these things forward without us dictating to them what it's got to look like and what the exact cost imposts are going to be and how they're going to occur. We used to have phones that we, run around to dial a number. We don't have them anymore. None of us thought our phones were going to be something that ran our lives and had everything on them. But none of that innovation was driven by government dictating it to it. And I think this is where we need to be careful. It's not about government saying, this is where we're going to land and this is how we're going to get there. It's about providing the incentive to those that, quite frankly, are much smarter than all of us, including the four of us here tonight. They're going to drive the innovation. And then we look at how we do the costs around it and how we work on it.
Well, you say
But
that,
if we
Senator, but
start
you've never seen
determining-
Jenna Clark in the lab coat. I mean, it is very effective and she can
Mate,
get
I'm never going
things
to see
done.
Jenna Clark again.
I wear glasses.
She's stuck in the WA prison. I'm never going to see Jenna Clark. She's
Now-
never going to be allowed to join us in the real world again.
That's right. We could just write notes on the GST money that we send each other. It'd be like special messages being sent through prison, right? You know, baking things into cakes.
Jen, I'll send you a lab coat.
Yeah, all right. Now,
I'll
all right,
bring my glasses.
enough on climate because, yeah, we're banged on about that a lot tonight. So